You're all present here at the clubroom of the International Student Housing here in London, and also you joining us from home via YouTube. We wholeheartedly welcome you to this public talk that is presented to you by the International School of the Golden Rose Cross today. Really delighted to have you here. The International School of the Golden Rosy Cross is a Gnostic spiritual school. And that means that we go from the standpoint, you'll find your place. We'll go from the standpoint that we're twofold beings. We know very well that we're mortals, but we're also, one part of us is immortal, divine, eternal. That is the pure Gnostic principle that underlies everything that the school does for its pupils, members, and like what we do like to convey during this presentation. And we know we have a physical body, and we know it operates on a biological level so exquisitely that we still don't understand how it works. But did you know that the physical body also has spiritual properties? That it potentially is a temple. But you know, a temple, that's what you have to build. It's not there when you want it. All the properties for that spiritual temple are present within you, and that's what the presentation of tonight will point out. So the theme of tonight is my right-hand side, Jacek, Cora, Ruben, and not forget Dario, who's monitoring the online, the hybrid technical side of things. And my name is Tanya. We would like to kindly ask you to switch your mobile phones off if you have not done so, or switch it in not disturb mode, or so we don't get the bleeps and the rings, etc. So thank you for that. Hello, welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry, Mary.
No, you're just in time. You're here. Just make yourself comfortable. So our program of today will be that we will watch together the presentation. It has a voiceover. We will be watching it together. It will last for about 13 minutes. And after that, the team will take over and is ready to take your questions, your answers, if you have them. The only thing we have to say up front is that we're not historians, so we cannot really ask or respond to like the typical historical questions about the pyramids. And we try to present a higher octave of them and how they, well, we will find out, are represented in our bodies. The whole meeting will last, we estimate, about 1.5 hours, including the presentation. Many of you will have also discovered that there's books at the back of the room that you can buy. If you don't want to buy, really want to check them out first, you can also go online. There's a little note that you can take with you, where you can find the books as PDFs that you can download for free if you want to know more. Also, the magazines, the pentagrams, you can take them with you for free if you'd like to, or really discover an article that say, oh, this is really what I would like to know. Take the pentagram with you. They're there for you. That is, for the moment, what I would like to convey to you. I wish us all a very inspired and inspiring meeting. So we'll start the presentation now.
Yes, before we start the meeting, we just wanted to mention that you can contact us through the website. We have podcasts, we have all sorts of upcoming events, which we will also mention at the end. The books that Tanya mentioned are also on our website, which is goldenrosecross.org. And now we shall start.
Really start.
Thank you.
Egyptian Hermeticism. Egyptian Hermeticism. The sealed word in the Great Pyramid. Ancient Egypt has puzzled investigators and researchers for centuries. It was a sophisticated and highly advanced civilization that appears to have sprung forth, fully grown, having no known predecessor. How could that be? Ancient Egypt and its Hermetic traditions can trace their roots to a glorious civilization that now sleeps beneath the waves of the Atlantic Ocean. The continent of Atlantis underwent periodic destruction over a span of hundreds of thousands of years. Those who followed the good law were made aware of pending catastrophes in advance, and groups that managed to escape the disasters became refugees. Like most empires, this civilization also engaged in the colonization of surrounding territories. After the catastrophe of 80,000 years ago, a group of Atlantean refugees arrived in the land of Kem, which was already inhabited. Reportedly, this group of refugees was led by Thoth, the Atlantean. They used their superior wisdom and magic to peacefully subdue and colonize the indigenous population of Kem. They taught them the Hermetic tradition that they had brought with them from sinking Atlantis. And it was during this period, 80,000 years ago, that the pyramid complex on the plains of Giza was constructed. The Great Pyramid of Giza, the most majestic and enigmatic of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. For centuries, the Great Pyramid has been the object of scientific, occult, and religious investigation. The Great Pyramid was built with stone materials so that it would stand the test of time. Only 2 types of stone were used in its construction: limestone and granite. It was constructed with a mathematical and architectural precision that cannot be disputed. Now we know that mathematics is the universal language of the creation. It is apparent that great intelligences built this magnificent structure with the intention of communicating a message of some kind to future generations, using this universal language. So, what is the Great Pyramid? What is its purpose? The Great Pyramid is a temple of initiation, in which all of the values, powers, radiations, and principles of the liberating path of return have been chiseled in stone in order to preserve them for humanity. Here we see an artist's depiction of the Great Pyramid as it must have appeared many thousands of years ago, when its polished limestone casing was completely intact. Here are a few keys to understanding some of the symbolism that has been carved into the pyramid. The Great Pyramid represents the planet Earth. The missing capstone represents the birth of enlightenment, the new human being. The passages symbolize the progress of the soul through the earth planes. The southern direction symbolizes the journey of the soul through time. The northern direction represents the return to physical existence. Downwards, leftwards, and eastwards symbolize a descent into evil. Upwards, rightwards, westwards symbolize progress towards enlightenment and immortality. Limestone represents the way of the physical world, while granite represents the workings of the spiritual world. The chambers represent eras of final decision. The open coffer symbolizes an escape from mortality and the physical world. The blockages represent that which needs to be removed before further progress can be achieved. Enclosed within the Great Pyramid is a sealed word, a word which can only be decoded and known by very few. Why only by a few? Because the true path of initiation, as laid out and carved into the stone chambers, passageways, and walls of the Great Pyramid, is not intended for the personality, but for the soul, the reborn soul. Whoever is unable to break the seal, whoever cannot decode the living word that is built into the very architecture of the Great Pyramid, will have to be content with merely examining the pyramid's many esoteric aspects. One can only decode this sealed word when one knows all of the letters, so to speak, in their correct combination. Before we begin our symbolic passage through the Great Pyramid, let us remind ourselves of the fivefold path of return, the path of liberation, as proposed by the School of the Golden Rosy Cross. The first step is insight, followed by a desire for liberation. This leads to self-surrender of the ego and a new way of living. Ultimately, resurrection in the new field of life. Now let us trace the journey of the candidate who is walking this fivefold path of liberation. The ancient wisdom tells us that a candidate encounters 3 great trials or tests on the path of return. The first test presents itself at the beginning of the path, where many earthly circumstances and powers work to lead the candidate astray and imprison him or her in the earthly regions. A second test follows at the point at which the great turnaround takes place, whereby the earthly ego, the I being, becomes greatly distressed and does everything to try and maintain its existence. Then there is a third and final test that takes place before the candidate may celebrate the great conquest over matter, and before he or she may experience the alchemical wedding, the reunion of spirit and soul. It should also be noted that there are 3 temple spaces, 3 sanctuaries to be found in the human being: head, heart, and pelvic. These 3 sanctuaries must be purified during this process of initiation. We first arrive at the secret entrance to the Great Pyramid via an underground passage that leads from the Sphinx. We shall assume that the candidate has already met the first 2 requirements of the fivefold path. He or she has acquired the necessary insight and has a sincere desire to walk the liberating path. Surprisingly, the way of the candidate does not lead directly upwards, but downwards, to the subterranean chamber, or underground chamber. The Egyptian Book of Going Forth by Day, also known as the Book of the Dead, calls this the chamber of the central fire, the chamber of ordeal. Unlike the rest of the Great Pyramid, this underground chamber is rough and unfinished. This underground chamber symbolizes the pelvic sanctuary of the human being, the plexus sacralis. Sacralis, because this plexus should be made sacred or become purified during the course of this process of initiation. At this stage, the candidate is confronted with the source of the fiery creative force known as Kundalini, with the microcosmic past, with his or her karma, and with the racial, ancestral, and cultural inheritance of many previous lives. This confrontation presents a serious trial and a barrier to the candidate. Looking further into the underground chamber, we see that there is an open pit. Just beyond the pit, there is a short corridor that ends in a wall, a literal dead end. These features symbolize the pitfalls and the futility that await those who pursue the horizontal path of existence. If the candidate succeeds in passing this first test in the underground chamber, the way of the candidate must then lead to the ascending passageways. However, direct access to the first ascending passage is blocked by 3 heavy slabs of red granite. This barrier is known as the granite plug. The first ascending passage is of an extremely low height and can only be traveled in a bent position. By its low height, this passage symbolizes the phase in which a candidate will be found under the yoke of the Mosaic law. Thou shalt not do this, thou shalt not do that, etc. The Book of Going Forth by Day calls this passageway the Hall of Truth in Darkness. But this passageway has been symbolically closed to the candidate. In the language of the Great Pyramid, this indicates that the direct path to rebirth and resurrection is no longer accessible. The way to liberation must be traveled through hard experiences in the physical world. Thus, there is only one way out of the underground chamber, and that is upwards through what is called the well shaft. The well shaft symbolizes the effort that will have to be exerted in order for the candidate to break his or her attachment to the things of the earth. Upon reaching the top of the well shaft, the candidate sees a crossroads, a Y-junction. Here we find the intersection of three passageways. The first ascending passageway, the second ascending passageway, better known as the Grand Gallery, and the Queen's Chamber passageway. Here the candidate has arrived at the second test, the test of the great turnaround. It is the turning away from all that is earthly and the turning towards the world of the soul. The opening to the well shaft leads downwards once again to the underground chamber, and this serves as a symbolic warning to the candidate. The candidate must resist the temptation to force his or her inner development by trying to walk the path with the old will. Doing so would immediately lead the candidate to a new fall into error. Before the candidate can proceed upwards to the Grand Gallery, he or she must travel through the horizontal passage that leads to the Queen's Chamber. This is the Chamber of Rebirth. This chamber symbolizes the heart sanctuary of the human being. Here, the new soul, the Queen, must be reborn. The roof of the Queen's Chamber is designed to serve as an arrow that points upwards to the next step on the path. In the eastern wall of the Queen's Chamber, there is a five-fold recess. This recess is called the niche. The number 5 symbolically points to the 5 aspects of the soul. The 5 soul fluids. These are the consciousness fire, the serpent fire, the hormonal fluid, the nerve fluid, and the blood. These 5 soul fluids combine to form the light vesture of the candidate, which is in the process of being purified. Directly opposite from the niche is a wall with 5 sides. In fact, the entire chamber is carved in the shape of a pentagon. This was not done by chance. Nothing within the Great Pyramid is there by chance. Only after this light birth in the inner sanctuary of the heart, symbolized by the Queen's Chamber, does the candidate have the right to enter the Hall of Truth in light. This is the second ascending passageway, the Grand Gallery. Stretching majestically before the candidate is a vaulted passageway that leads upwards to the King's Chamber. The Grand Gallery is 30 feet high with a length of 153 feet. With its corbelled walls and imposing height, The Grand Gallery symbolizes an expansion of light power that is attracted by the candidate as he or she continues to walk the path of self-surrender. From this point onwards, the candidate no longer stands under the yoke of the old law. The candidate voluntarily places himself or herself under a new law. Thy will be done. These words summarize the essence of self-surrender and service. At the end of the Grand Gallery, a significant obstacle awaits the candidate. It is called the Great Step. The Great Step is a 3-foot-high limestone block that sits in front of the opening to the antechamber that leads to the king's chamber. Beginning with this threshold, the type of stone in the pyramid changes from limestone to red granite. This points to a change of consciousness in the candidate. He or she is entering spiritual ground. The candidate now approaches the third and decisive test and must prepare to do so with great humility. It is this humility, this inner knowledge of being able to do nothing under his or her own power, that enables the candidate to mount this high step. That is why this threshold is called the Stone of God, or the Throne of Righteousness. After crossing over the Great Step, the candidate reaches a small space known as the antechamber, or the chamber of the triple veil. From this chamber, a short passageway leads to the goal, the king's chamber. Just inside of the entrance to the antechamber hangs a granite leaf with a small protrusion or boss that is shaped like the Egyptian hieroglyph for bread. What is the meaning of this? What is this bread? Before entering the corridor that leads to the king's chamber, the candidate can look up and see 4 vertical grooves on the wall above the opening to that passageway. These 4 grooves symbolize that a new 4-fold power, a 4-fold food of renewal, is being handed to the candidate. Yes, the 4 holy foods. This is the symbolic bread that is given to the candidate on the path as a purifying salt. After passing through another low passageway in a crouched position, the candidate humbly enters the king's chamber. This is the chamber of Osiris, the chamber of resurrection. This chamber symbolizes the head sanctuary of the human being. And this is where the purified new thinking faculty, the cosmic consciousness of the human being, reunites and merges with spirit consciousness. When we view the roof of the king's chamber, we can see that it also serves as an arrow, pointing upwards towards the apex of the pyramid, towards liberation and the new human being. This symbolism tells us that the newly merged spirit-soul consciousness extends the thinking of the human being beyond the earth plane and puts him or her in direct contact with the universal spirit. The king's chamber is bare, except for an empty coffer. It is the symbol of the absolute self-surrender to the universal spirit, which is within and without. It is also the symbol and the truth of the glorious resurrection which is to follow. Here we are reminded of the temple tomb of Christian Rosycross. And it is here, in the king's chamber, that the seal, which protects and keeps the word, is broken. What is the word? From the temple of Osiris until this hour, along the entire universal path resounds the word of the Master. Be ye perfect, therefore, as your Father in heaven is perfect. Having passed the 3 tests, the newly initiated one now leaves the temple of initiation. Not in order to leave the earthly regions behind, but in order to return to humanity, to serve humanity. The initiate does not withdraw into an ivory tower. No. The initiate sacrifices himself or herself in complete service to God, the world, and to humanity. He or she adopts a new way of living. The great intelligences who built this monument knew that a picture is worth 1,000 words. They wanted future generations to know that the path of liberation, the path of return, is of ancient origin and is always open to anyone who sincerely wants to walk that path. The human being has everything he or she requires to accomplish this great work. The 3 sanctuaries are waiting to be purified. It is up to the human being, the candidate, to obtain self-knowledge about himself or herself, and then make the choice to either remain bound to the earth experience and to the endless wheel of death and rebirth, or to walk the liberating path that leads to a resurrection in the new field of life. Humanity owes a tremendous debt of gratitude to those who cared enough to seal the meaning of Egyptian Hermeticism within this magnificent stone monument. It was their hope and their mission that we would decode the message, understand it, and then use that knowledge to travel the way of the stars.
For discussion, exchange, or any questions or any insights that you may have, or any thoughts that this presentation may have brought. Just to mention, again, this presentation was meant to bring to light some symbology that we have inherited from ancient Egypt, symbology which actually has been changed through ages, like for example in esoteric Christianity, alchemy, in the Chinese Tao Te Ching. So this is universal knowledge that is brought to us.
Maybe people at the back may not well hear you well. Maybe.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can everybody hear okay? Yes? Thank you. Thank you. So Yes, please.
Yes, sir, please.
Yes, thank you. Great presentation, very interesting. How do you think that your society can use this knowledge to address current affairs in the world? Is it like, for example, the war going on, lots of war going, is that just something that is to one side and they just have to be left to get on with it whilst we do something else? Or can it be used in a way to bring peace? What's your view?
Again, this is, as we said, it's a path of liberation, of real freedom. But in order to be able to achieve that freedom, you need to go through that process of transfiguration, of self-knowledge. And you need to detach yourself from that earthly influences, that duality that we are confronted with on a daily basis. Our thoughts, feelings, judgment, that ego, who is always there. We are reacting. Therefore, that knowledge, which is a Gnostic universal knowledge, has been always there, as Cora was saying, for ancient times. And we are just only here probably bringing to the attention of you all that knowledge, that wisdom that is there. Then it will be up to the individual. I mean, sometimes it will be up to the individual. We were talking about the element of what happens. You think about the 60s or the 50s, looking for that revolutions. The only real revolution is the inner revolution.
Oh.
That means if you want to change the world, you need to change yourself. And this is a path to reach that freedom.
So for the individual, it has no application to government. Is that what you're saying?
Your two questions are very pertinent and important. And we can say that the Rosy Cross, the Golden Rosy Cross, is active in the world. And if it is active in the world, it has a task. And the task is not to escape, to run away, to isolate oneself, but to bring a coherent and clear answer to how to change consciousness of humanity. So not only one individual or another individual, but how systematically, so from the point of view of a system of vibration, the Golden Rosy Cross acts in and around the whole planet. And it does so through what we would call, we can explore that together this evening, soul vibration or soul consciousness, because the subject today is a spiritual call. So what is this spirituality? The spirituality is destined for every human being, whether they carry a Kalashnikov or whether they carry a white flag or whatever, because it goes to the depth of human existence. And we said that at the beginning, or it was dealt with, yes, when Tanya gave us the introduction, she said, there are two elements in us, in every human being, the mortal, which we know or don't know, but which we have to face in our life, and also the immortal. So each human being carries immortality in himself or herself. And it is to bring that immortality to the fore, to bring that to the first plan of life. And then life begins to change. and we begin to change our environment as well. We begin to change relationships. We begin to change the whole progress of humanity. And this has been the Gnostic message, well, from the dawn of humanity to, as Reuben was saying, to also undergo that inner revolution. And that is through letting go, that is through self-sacrifice, to break away from our egocentric way of being. And that's a whole process, isn't it? It's not something which just happens like that. It's a question of purification. And that purification will then have an immediate effect on our environment as well. I don't know if that goes in the direction of your
Very good,
comments.
yes.
Thank you. So maybe others would like to come in, please. On that or other issues, how you are responding to the themes and the subjects we have raised. Let me come in.
Somebody else is going to.
Okay,
Was there a question?
Sorry. Yeah, please.
yes, please.
Maybe on the soul vibration, if you could elaborate more on that. Like is there different states of vibration and then you want to enter that final stage?
Would you hear it? Soul vibration.
Again, probably is, you were talking about the final stage, no? But probably is just we need to start from the beginning. This is a path, it's a journey of inner discovery and transformation. Therefore, it requires of work. It requires of confronting ourselves. It requires of that inner work on a daily basis, and that's when the process starts. And sometimes, because that happens, that change will happen not with the will that we have right now. I mean, there needs to be a change in that, because if we want to change, we want to reach that high level of vibration. Straight away, I want to go straight away to the king's chamber. I want to go up straight away. I don't want to go for the first or the second sanctuary. I want to go straight away. That's the will of the ego. Wants to know and wants to find the short path to reach the summit. Again, inner knowledge means to know yourself, to confront with your own fears, and that brings also a new consciousness. That new consciousness will bring a different stage in your vibration. That soul will change. You will move from that underground chamber, when you are confronting with your earthly desires, to that queen's chamber that we were talking, and that will bring that is the chamber of rebirth, is the birth of the new soul. That's already there is a new vibration and a new level of consciousness. Through that process of self-surrender of your I personality and egocentric personality. It doesn't happen only at that intellectual level of willing to make that change. It happens through a process of inner discovery of who you are really right now. We're talking about the element of new consciousness, to understand who we are, that we are part of the same unity. We were talking about the element of that new law. The human being will be under a new law. A new law, we could say the new law of God. But what is the new law of God? Is high vibration. The new law of God is love. But what love? Why are we alive? We're alive to to learn about that love. And that real love will teach us to live in harmony, to live in peace, to understand that there are not outer enemies around us. But for that, we need to move upwards from that underground chamber in the pyramid. Because if we follow the horizontal path, it has an end, an endless process, a loop of suffering and pleasure. It never ends. Then to be able, we need to have that level of longing and insight to look for that upward, to look upwards. And then it's going to go to that Queen's chamber. There's a change in the consciousness, new soul, and that change. And that change in vibration level, how we see yourself and you see others. And you understand that you are part of the same unity, that you are one. There are no enemies.
Does that go along your question about where those vibrations come from? Can we go a bit deeper into what you were trying to say?
Yeah, so having read Joy Dispenza books, she talks a lot about vibration, the alpha, theta, beta. So then I thought you kind of linked to that, but I guess that's some common themes.
We could try and decipher that a little bit from the design that you saw.
Can you repeat the question for the viewers from on YouTube?
Can you repeat again your question? Yeah, because we have we're working on.
I think we need to repeat from here, otherwise
yeah.
we cannot hear.
The question was about the vibrations of the brain, I think, the alpha, beta, that Joe Dispenza mentions in his books. So
Yeah.
those are physical vibrations that you mentioned, that Joe Dispenza mentions, and those would be a consequence of a different evolution of our soul also. So maybe if I can summarize it a bit what Ruben mentioned, and actually mentioning during the presentation, we spoke about the five-fold gnosis, and that those 5 steps were starting with insight and longing. So these are different vibrations, I would say, of our old personality that starts to change, that is opening. So the vibration changes a little bit. These 2 changes, that insight that we managed to have after many lives, maybe after many experiences, with something opens in us, and we have that insight that there is something else that change. That's the first step of changing the vibration, and then we start to long for something else, and that opens us up even more towards another change, which is a self-surrender to the light, which can purify us. And through that purification that Ruben also mentioned, we again start changing our vibration, and we can enter to the Queen's chamber. So a new soul can be born. The
Yeah.
next level of vibration.
Yeah.
Yeah, the soul.
I'd just like to go back a little bit to paint the picture before we create solutions, because solutions are nice, but we have to know where we are, where we stand. And in the presentation, we had the 3 levels of consciousness, which means you and I are working out of 3 levels of consciousness, which are represented in the head, in the heart, and in the pelvis. And that's related also to our desires, to our will, to our thinking, to our emotions. And basically, to come back to the first question from our friend, the anarchy and the violence and the despicable condition in which humanity finds itself is because not of outside forces and energies, but because there is total disharmony between those three levels of consciousness. So we have to understand that. And if we understand that, we may then have a yearning, we may then wish to go somewhere else. But if we don't see ourselves as we are, as basically egocentric beings that want to satisfy the head, the heart, and the pelvic sanctuary, as we call it. But if we talk of immortality, there is another energy. There is another force that is working in and through us. And maybe that's why we've come to this public talk. That's why we read books. That's why we go onto the internet. We try to find solutions to life, to our existence. And that's all well and good. But we won't change ourselves if we don't find the immortal in us. And the immortal in us is there. And it is said in some of the Gospels, certainly those that were discovered in Nag Hammadi, that the kingdom of God is closer than our hands and our feet. So closer than the hands and the feet, the kingdom of God. So that has nothing to do with yearning, with searching, and with those three sanctuaries. It is to do with a vibration. That comes back to your question. There is a powerful inner vibration of each human being to find what we were talking about, love, to find harmony, peace, and so on. But if we find it through those three sanctuaries without purification, we won't get anywhere. So it is an element that is important, is that we allow, not that we purify. How can the ego purify the ego? How can a selfish person purify himself? He has to allow a higher vibration, which is the vibration of the universal light, which is omnipresent, to begin to work in and through him or her. So to give space, to allow for that force of eternity, which is there, which is omnipresent, but we don't know it through our three levels of consciousness. But we aspire to it. We're seekers. That's why we come to these lectures. That's why we talk about these subjects. And now the question is not to seek, but actually to find, and actually to come into that new relationship. And I saw that you were coming with a question, so maybe it's related. Yes, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, the knowledge that you have presented here today, does it have its roots from the teachings of Hermes Trismegistus? And if so, can you give us a little bit of a background on this ancient being?
Okay, well, shall we do that? We start off.
Can you repeat the question for
with
our
that? Yes. What you're saying and how you're saying it, has this anything to do with or related to this ancient figure of Hermes or Hermes Trismegistus? And how does that fit in to this picture that we're trying to present? So does that reflect what you're saying? Yeah. Well, we've given ourselves away in the title because, and maybe that's why some have come here, because it's Egyptian Hermetism, a spiritual call. So who is, I was going to say what is, but who is Hermes? Hermes is initially the seeker. Hermes is also what is called a three times great. The three times great Trismegistus, Hermes, which may be linked to the Egyptian Egyptian tradition of the god Tot, T-O-T-H in our language, Thoth. And Thoth has been linked also to Hermes. And Hermes is the teacher. Hermes is the one who knows and who transforms life. So that is the seeker who comes into contact with his divine being. And his divine being is Pimander. And if you refer to Gnostic writings and teachings, you will find what is called in Latin the Corpus Hermeticum. And in the Corpus Hermeticum, you have the dialogue. You have the dialogue between the master and the pupil, or between Hermes and Pimander, questioning, going more deeply into it. So yes, the Hermetic principle, and we use Hermetic in English at least as being something that is closed, something that is unknown. So we could even say it's a mystery. But each mystery can be and must be unraveled. And the process of Hermes is to be able to find the solutions to the universe and to us as creatures of the universe. So we see in Plato, we see also in the Renaissance. So when we talk of the spiritual Renaissance, so it's taking us a few thousand years on in human history, we see the first translation of the Hermes, of the Corpus Hermeticum into Latin and then into other languages, where the mysteries of the Hermetic path is explained. And today the spiritual school of the Golden Rosy Cross talks about the Egyptian arch-gnosis. So what we see through the whole of history is not only the figure or the figurehead or the announcement of true philosophy and true change, but we see also gnosis or the Gnostic tradition, and you can look that up and so on. And the Gnostic tradition speaks about the knowledge that doesn't come from the intellect, but comes from the heart. And this is that link that we've tried to, or our friends in the United States who made this presentation, it was given in New York and given in a few other states in the US, tried to show that those three levels of consciousness of vibration have to then be linked together to one, to unify. And then Hermes, as the pupil, becomes the master. And it is our task in life not to be a pupil, not to be a student of life, but to become an inner master of life. And then it becomes Hermes Trismegistos, the threefold one who knows, because then there is balance between the three sanctuaries. I'm sorry, I've linked in a little bit to the vibration and then into Hermes, and maybe it was a little bit lengthy, so please, maybe we have to cut that up a little bit and for others to come in, and so we can work on these issues, which we're trying to say are issues of existence, of life, and not theory and philosophy.
Issues of today, of present and eternity,
Is-
linking present with
Is that all right? Did you feel that that's?
Yeah.
You wanted to come in? No. Yes, please, sir.
If I just, before that, if I just may mention that we have a few books written by one of the grandmasters of our school that address these writings, Hermetic writings. They're called Egyptian arch noses. And they go through the tabula smaragdina, through the corpus Helmeticum, and try to translate a little bit for us. But as Jacek was saying, these are things that need to be lived within ourselves, not just intellectually read.
They are available for free on PDF on our website.
goldenrosicross.org/books.
So you see, we're giving publicity and propaganda here. But
But for free.
that is not the purpose.
No.
Well, it is, but it isn't. So you would like to come in, please?
Yes, on this pathway to the oneness, so I'd like to expound on the pathway to the oneness. So in the videotape, there was mention of race. So after the conference earlier on, we were talking about different, the British government's version or understanding of race and ethnicity. So the British government has an understanding of race and ethnicity. So I'd like to understand when race was mentioned to do with identity in the video, what is your understanding of race and its significance on the pathway to the one?
Yeah, that's right at the beginning. Races
With
Atlantis and the
Atlantis.
movements.
Again, I will just go to the principles with your first question. I think that we are talking about oneness.
Yes, on the way. But
We are talking about unity.
yes,
And again, so it's the same. We go to that dialectical human being trying to create, always focus on elements who differentiate us from each other. When the key element here is to try to understand that we are one.
yes, that's the end of it. But
Yeah.
but you mentioned race there, so well, they're saying there's only one race, or what we must we recognize the differences in ourselves in order to come to the one, or in what way does identity and race factor in the process, as it were?
Identity and race are essential, are so important
Right.
to see and to know and to recognize.
Right.
And Rubin went immediately a bit further along in the presentation, saying that it is impossible for a Rosicrucian or agnostic to be able to differentiate or to lead to prejudice or to lead to hate based on race, based on religion, and so on and so on. But it is true that in the evolution of humanity, and we're talking of millions of years by which this humanity has to go through a process of individualization and then move into unity. So because of the way in which the planet has evolved, so we talk of Atlantis, we talk of Lemuria, and we now talk of these new area or era or period in which we find ourselves. So it's not limited to the British government. It's opening our understanding that many races have been created.
How many races have been created?
We're talking of the 7 basic races.
Ah, 7. Okay.
Yes, the 7 basic races.
Interesting.
That were reflected later on when we come into Europe and into the manifestation of Europe, and we see the conflict today, and you wanted to know immediately what's happening with Hamas and with Israel and so on. These are brothers and sisters who are fighting against each other, even though they become racially, and from the point of view of their tribes, they come from the same tribe, and they were then split into 7 tribes, and then this because of the egocentricity of man, led to the huge conflict that we see today. We're really at the doorstep. If we go too far, humanity can annihilate itself. And the role of spiritual schools like the Golden Rosy Cross is to prevent that annihilation. Why? Because the spiritual essence of each one of us has to be safeguarded. And if we have a nuclear cataclysm of one sort or another, this can wipe away the evolution of humanity to individuality, to self-awareness, to group unity, where then we come to a situation where there is basically no difference between race, between culture, between religion, and so on, because we can identify the humanity in each human being. And that is not easy to do, because if I see someone who's Chinese and I have had background in Hong Kong, I may react in a certain way. If I see a black person, I see a white person, and so on and so on. We are working through glasses of our consciousness of our prejudices. And how can we remove those glasses? How can we remove those filters and actually recognize in every human being their intrinsic value as a true human being, without any form saying, he or she is dressed in this way, he or she is like this, he or she is like this. It's an enormous process of self-knowledge, overcoming oneself, and being open to the universal that is out there maybe, but is also in us.
But wouldn't that destroy what it means to be human? Because to be human means that we all have different personalities and different characters. But if we're all the same and we're lobotomized, then we all become one, but then we're all the same. We'll be like the Agent Smith in the Matrix. Is that the oneness that you're looking for?
I don't think so.
Well, that means what elements of difference should be conserved then in order to remain human?
Unity in diversity, we could call it, yeah. But because we connect with each other from that spirit spark that we all have.
You'll have to explain
From that original divinity that we still have a remnant, all of us inside, that can reunite us, make us again a divine human being, and restore the original love and unity of all of us, which doesn't mean that we're all the same,
Right.
yeah, but it means that we're all one in different ways. But that is true love, yeah, that recognition of our original divinity and recognizing that we're all part of humanity, we're all one, and that is true love, that we are true love, true unity that we aspire towards.
We could maybe go a bit further then and say what prevents us from using our talents? Nobody, nothing. We can go ahead and do what we want, near enough. Okay, so our personality is either linked to self-development, self-aggrandizement. You know, I want to be the president, I want to be the best man in town, I want to be the best football player, I want to be a millionaire when I'm 30, and then you realize at 40 you're still struggling and all the rest of it. So how is our personality focused? On what? What do I aspire to? What do I desire? But it doesn't mean to negate our talents. And each one of us has many different talents. And are those talents used for oneself, for self-aggrandizement, to be stronger, richer, more powerful, and I've said that in one or two of the public talks, that the only democratic factor that unites us is death. There's nothing else. That's the only moment when things are finished and there's nothing done. So what do we do during this period of our span of our lives? Do we use our personality for self-aggrandizement and forget that there is a divine call, a divine spark in our being, and then the personality can use its talents, each one, however they're going to be used, not in an egocentric, closed way, but in a way to be able to open to that inner divinity, to that inner unity which is there. And then life makes sense. And it is not just trying to make ends meet at the end of every month in terms of your rent, in terms of your family, in terms of your profession or whatever. But life takes on a completely different vista, a different perspective, because we're able to respond to that inner core which is there. That's why we're sitting here and we're talking about it. Otherwise, it's best to go and prepare for the semi-final of the rugby match.
And I think also that requires that inner change. And that inner change is a transition from the influence of the ego to the transforming influence of the soul. And it's a transition. It's a process of transfiguration, of inner change.
So the ego has no use.
No, indeed, it does for every individual. We are individuals, but at the same time, as I say, we need to reach, as Jesse was saying, to reach that final goal, we need to go through that inner change. And that is a transition from the influence of ego to the transforming influence of the soul.
But the ego needs to decrease so that the disappear. So that the other, the soul, the new being in us can grow. You can't serve two masters. In fact, in the Gospel of Thomas, it is said it is impossible for a man to mount two horses or to stretch two bows. It is impossible for a servant to serve two masters. Otherwise, he will honor the one and treat the other with contempt. So, who is our inner master? Who are we looking for and serving? And that is a whole process, as we're trying to say, of discovery. It is that discovery that is so important. There is a question or a comment.
Yeah, we have a question. Yeah, we have a question from Nigeria, from Xavier Brown. And he asked, how can I enter the chamber of the queen and that of the king? What do I have to do? Do I have to meditate or transfigure?
Thank you.
So it ties in quite nicely with, oh, the eye.
I will immediately answer that, if I may, saying you can't. The eye cannot enter into those chambers. The eye has to, as Ruben was explaining, first has to go down into the chamber at the bottom, be confronted with the ego, and there allow for the process which is called the enduristic death. It is the death of the ego to allow for, as Ruben was explaining, for the new soul to grow. So there is no place for the I within those two higher sanctuaries. And that's okay, that's normal. There are always conditions, and the condition of freedom and responsibility is to let go of all constraints. And one of the greatest constraints we have is the ego. Clearly, that's what causes all the action, the reaction, wars, conflict, based on dogma, based on beliefs, based on religion, and so on. And I think we know that from our experience in life. Beg your pardon.
Why do you use the term new soul rather than just soul? Is there?
Sorry, just to repeat the question, why do we use the word new soul as opposed to just soul?
Because what we have at the moment is just a natural ensoulment, which is actually what we were just speaking about, the ego, the I. We are focused towards our own maintenance, self-maintenance. So this is the ensoulment, the old, we also call this the old soul, what we have at the moment, which needs to go through that process of diminishing and letting the other one take its place, which is the new soul, which can enter the Queen's chamber. Actually, that is in certain alchemical writings is called the Queen. The new soul is called the White Queen, which can be reunited with the Red King in the final spirit's soul.
I mean, at the end, it's about choice. And that's wonderful, because as individuals, we have that. We can choose to obtain self-knowledge at that underground chamber. We can choose to remain bound to the earthly experiences until we die, and we go again and again through the same experiences, or we could walk the liberating path, which leads to the resurrection, that connection with the spirit. That at the end is that is a path of liberation, is a path of freedom, under that new law that encompasses everything and everyone, but is about choice through that inner knowledge. It's up to us.
I'd like to come back to your question about the soul. And we, in the presentation, it came through, but maybe not strongly enough, so maybe one can put an accent there. The new soul is not something abstract. So here we are talking about spirituality. Here we are talking about Hermetism, but we're talking about ourselves. And the soul is composed of what we would call, in the Gnostic tradition and in Rosicrucianism as well, of 5 fluids that circulate and compose our being. So when you say, I feel, I think, I react, I have will, and so on, this has a bearing on our physical body and also our subtle bodies, because some of you are nodding your heads, so I can see that you have that esoteric element of knowledge of the etheric body, the astral body, the ego or the mental body. So we have 4 bodies. So it's not only the physical that is visible, but it's also all the rest. And what is that rest? It's made up of those 5 fluids. And the 5 fluids are etheric in nature. So it is consciousness. The way I feel, I think, I react, that's my consciousness. And that is natural. And therefore it is the egocentric element of consciousness. But then it goes further. it goes into our whole structure. We as human beings are beings that walk on two legs, basically. And it means that we are upheld by that column of energy of fire, which in esoteric science is called the serpent fire. And the serpent fire has an influence on our whole metabolism, and the whole way in which we operate. But that is also related to the nervous fluid. And the nerve fluid goes into every single one of our cells. And it goes into our cells through what? Through the hormonal secretion. And it is through the different hormones that we produce on a daily basis. Every time we are excited, every time you're falling asleep during a public lecture like this one, or when you're alive in the morning or whatever. These are different hormones that are secreted in your body. And the hormonal structure is also reflects that natural soul. And those 5 fluids need to be changed. So it's not surprising that right from the beginning, we have been talking about purification. So it's not belief, it's not faith, it's none of these things, but self-knowledge. Who am I? How do I operate? What does this mean to me when I go to my office, when I have my relations with my family? What does it mean when I step into a bus or a train or a plane? How is that? What's happening there? And I am the actor of my destiny. If we see that, we can change our destiny, but how? By purifying our system. And yeah, okay, it's fairly clear that many young people today are moving, and luckily I think, into vegetarianism, into being vegans and so on. Why? Because they realize that we're polluting the planet, we're killing humanity by our way of living. So it's not surprising, maybe, that for Rosicrucians, vegetarianism is a normal state of being. That also absence of any form of external stimulants, be it alcohol, be it we don't go into that. We may have had experience of that, but we realize they're all closed circuits and create an enormous amount of suffering as well. So yes, it's really looking at the way in which we will and can change our life pattern, our life structure. And we don't need to have gurus, authorities, and dogma, beliefs in that respect, because all of the authority is to be found in ourselves. And that's the most difficult thing to accept, because from the very outset, we've been saying, listen to mommy, listen to daddy, listen to the teacher, listen to the professor, listen to your boss. Ba-bum, 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 ba-bum. It's created a system of dependence. And we have to move to a system of autonomy, a system of independence. Yeah. But if it's based on the ego, that leads to world wars. But if it's based on the new soul, then it's a bit different. Is that okay? Yeah? Thank you. Maybe there are other persons who haven't had the opportunity to come in. We're looking a little bit out of our time to respect. Yes, please.
Would you be able to give us more information about sacred geometry within pyramid, especially in the context of numerical parallels with the human body?
So the question is about the sacred geometry related to obviously the pyramid that was exposed and expressed in the presentation, but also in relation to the human body. And maybe we can think of the Fibonacci series.
Geometry. Sacred
we know that the geometry and the measurements of the pyramid are linked with the measurements of planet Earth.
Symbol, school, element.
We know that the pyramid is facing the true north, you know, almost to perfection. So the calculations and the ability, the architectural abilities are definitely not in line with what historians tell us, you know, humanity was supposed to be able to do in those times. It would be really hard in our days to reproduce such building and with such precision.
It is the golden ratio. Yes, please, somebody was, yeah.
Right, it's connected with the sacred geometry. Who made the pyramid? Is it us humans for evolution or other intelligent beings? After you answer the sacred geometry.
Yes, there is an incredible necessity of interaction between different levels of knowledge, of vibration that was asked by our friend, and therefore different entities. We're not alone. So of course, there is an interaction between higher intelligences, between higher beings. It doesn't mean little green men, you know, walking around, okay? But the whole of history shows the interaction between, well, in the Golden Rosy Cross, we can also talk about the universal brotherhood, the universal brotherhood of liberated souls that have over millions of years evolved, and their whole task is to also help assist humanity to move into that. And then the question of sacred geometry is an essential part of the structure of our own metabolism, in fact. And it didn't finish with the pyramids. We're going to have a look, I think, at the universal symbol, which is vibrating there. But if you take the influence of the Templars and the Gothic cathedrals, which I was able to visit 2 days ago in France, you see there the beauty of the sacred geometry represented in the symbol of the rose. In fact, dominated by a religion without them realizing that underneath that religion, there is a spiritual current, the Gnostic current, which works on the golden ratio. Absolutely. And I think now a little bit about the symbol. You wanted to?
The symbol of the school.
Yeah, please.
That's maybe not, we can't really say that it directly relates to sacred geometry.
Speak
Oh,
louder,
so-
because
sorry.
at the back they may not hear you.
Okay. Did you want to explain? You just meant, yeah, we can't stop the symbol of the school vibrating. It's vibrating very nicely. We can't really keep it still. So we wanted to mention the symbol of the School of the Golden Rosy Cross, which is impressed upon the pyramid in the picture that you see there, and which actually represents the whole path of liberation that the School of the Golden Rosy Cross and generally all universal wisdom as it's been transmitted has been proposing, starting from that central point, which is center of the pyramid, the top of the pyramid, which we call the spirit spark, which we all possess inside, but we need to rediscover it. We need to open up ourselves and rediscover that inside that we are actually, we can become divine beings again. So starting from that spirit spark, then you see the triangle, that spirit sparks are recognizing and letting that rose of the heart, which we also call the spirit spark, bloom. Another pointed towards the Rosicrucian symbolism, so the rose of the heart, let that bloom. It will change our three centers of being, which we also mentioned during our presentation. So the heart center, the head, and the pelvic sanctuary. Starting in the heart with the rose of the heart blooming, and then changing the head sanctuary, so changing our mind, our intellect, and then through the new mind and new will, we can purify also the pelvic center. And this process continues, this purification process can continue, represented by that triangle. And this purification, self-surrender, through the self-surrender to the light, can bring in new ethers, which were also mentioned during the presentation, the new four ethers that change actually our four bodies, which are represented in the symbol by the square. So our physical, etheric, astral, and mental body, which change, which means our whole being is changed and can be then called divine again and reunified with the whole, which is the circle, which is again shown in the symbol of the skull.
Man, generically speaking, cosmos, microcosm, macrocosm. It's all there. It's all like that. So,
Yeah, again, link the sacred geometry. That symbol is two-dimensional and it's static. Is there like a way to be like three-dimensional and not non-static, is square, triangle, and circle? Yes, there or stick. Is it because nowadays watch many videos about sacred geometry, power of life, how is it three-dimensional or just two-dimensional? Is this symbol again two-dimensional presentation of a three-dimensional symbol?
we'll improve our presentation next time, and we'll give you a four-dimensional view of the symbol. We have in one of our conference centers, at the entrance door, there is a very beautiful presentation, static, not holograph, but static, of that symbol in its three dimensions at least. Because in fact, as Cora was saying, we as beings, we are four-dimensional at least. But then we have three more, and that's where we have the seven. So we're talking of the sevenfold human being that has to be erected in ourselves.
The perception of time, maybe. How we feel that, like sometimes we feel that 5 minutes is like an hour, and another time an hour.
5 minutes, yeah.
Like blink of an eye.
Well, that's exactly right. So we're caught up as beings in space and time. We're saying, well, we've done already 1 hour, 40 minutes, and I have a train to catch. Blah, 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 blah. So we are prisoners of time, but we have to accept that as well, because we have to eat, we have to live, and so on. But for the Rosicrucian, the whole essence of life and of the new consciousness is to be beyond time, not tomorrow and not the past. We learn from the past, but we talk of the living present. That means the here and now. And it may happen sometimes during your life when we stop thinking, we stop feeling, we stop turning around, like mice in a cage. And during that moment, we may experience eternity in time, because eternity is here and it's not outside of ourselves. It's a state of consciousness by which you can break through time and now at this very second, this very moment, enter into eternity. So there is no future heaven. There is no future hell. We create the hell of our existence, and we can create the heaven of a new existence, a new being, here and now. Not saying, well, this is my life, I've got another 10 years to go, another 100 years to go, let's make most of it, and then we'll see what happens, and then I'll join a religion just to be on the safe side and be cremated as I should be. No, 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 no. It is here and now that we're able to enter into that new consciousness, working where we work, living where we live, not going to an ashram, not going to a guru or a leader or whatever, but to be able to find that eternity in ourselves. But you know, that requires what we were talking about. We were talking about insight and desire and liberation, but it also requires maybe a bit of silence, a bit of time to stop. Who's telling us to keep running? Only you and I. So who tells us that maybe we can just slow down a bit or just stop sometimes and just let things be? And that's not easy.
So perhaps we experience the déjà vu, like for seconds or for a moment, that we know what's happening. We already know it.
We already know it because it's already written in our genes, not genes you wear, but the genes. It's already inscribed in our being. So that is the déjà vu, which is extraordinary, because in fact, we have all the knowledge we need. We just have to discover or uncover it in our being. Yes, sir. We're moving to the last period.
Questions,
Please.
well, very short. May not be transfigurated. I know the answer, but it's interesting. And the second question, I don't know an answer about music and songs. Is there any music and any musics and songs have to be transfigurated? That's all. Thank you.
Did you get the first question? What was the first question?
The first question, who may not to be transfigurated in nowadays incarnation? So any borders, someone might be forbidden, to be transfigurated. I had in this week, who may not to be. And the second question about influence of music or songs to be transfigurated.
Music is a transfiguration.
Sound,
What do you want to choose?
because sound vibration, manipulation of any sounds might be have. Which sound?
Rosicrucian pop stars, musicians.
Yeah, John Lennon.
Rosie Cross, sorry.
Yeah.
Rosie Cross.
There are many, many levels of vibration, which we're discussing. And those many levels of vibration are different levels of consciousness. And where are we in terms of life's experience? If we are still saying, I want to make full use of my life, I want to do everything possible, blah, 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 maybe we haven't come to that dead end in our inner existence, where we're really searching for the truth, not for possession, but for truth. I'm just giving that sort of example. And then that person, regardless of race, of color, of belief, of nationality, or whatever, is right. Thank you very much. All the best. Take it easy. Is ripe, can be ripe for the process of transfiguration. So there is no limit the limits that we set ourselves are our own limits. Is that all right?
So in Central Europe, they say something different about Victoria University in Seattle. But I will ask them on Tuesday why in London it was say like that, and why in there. So
Okay, I wish you a good trip to which country? To which country are you going?
sorry,
Which country?
no, it's online simply, and it doesn't matter from which country.
Okay. Right, okay. But, you know, Gnostics are not people who just follow a dogma. They may see, if I look at this glass, you see it this way, and the light projected on it may be different to the light here, but it is still a glass. And what we're discussing is the glass and not the projection. So transfiguration is essential to whether you are of the Golden Rosy Cross in Poland, in Russia, in Czechoslovakia, or wherever, or whether you are here in the United Kingdom. Music. Ta-da. Well, music, Kata-Rose de Petri, who is one of our spiritual leaders, who is one of the founders, or not the founders, but one of the important persons in the work of the spiritual school. I participated many years ago in a meeting, and when she talked about music, and she explained that there are certain composers who arrive at, through their talents and through their way of being, they arrive at the harmony of the spheres. That's an expression that comes from an English, not philosopher, but Rosicrucian, Robert Flood, where he talks about the harmony of the spheres, and that beings like Mozart, like Bach, arrive at that vibration somewhere to link their aspiration or the vibration they create through their music with the soul quality. And then each one of us can feel how far certain music can down us, can be heavy, and can be linking ourselves to the earth, to things which are material, or can become more ethereal, more etheric. But we have to be careful, because art, like science, like religion, can be dead ends on a spiritual path. Because someone who is a composer may think, here I am, I've got God by his feet, and I'm now off into the seventh heaven. Could be a total illusion. The artist, the painter, may think, well, this is it. You know, I've come into union with the Godhead or God. If there is an immediate identification of the creation and the creator, what happens? It's like Narcissus, the narcissistic tendency of looking at one's reflection in the water and saying, there I saw the new man. Total illusion. So yes, music plays a part in the activities of the Golden Rosy Cross, but it has to be chosen carefully and consciously, but it is not an end in itself. So there is no end in anything except in the nothing. And the nothing is the reality of being. I think we've had a few people who've been leaving. Normally we had promised, we've overstepped. And I think now we would ask us to be able to close this part, but we still have time for refreshments. We still have time to talk on a bilateral level if you so wish after this talk. Yeah. Please.
So now I'm finally seeing you. I would like to thank you and of course our panel, Yace, Cora, Ruben, and Dario, for being here with us today. I really we sincerely hope that you have become more aware of how special we are as human beings, and that we have special tasks on this beautiful earth, that we are very, sort of maybe deeply seated aware of, that we're seeking for it. We hope to have brought that to a deeper or higher level of understanding in you, that something in you is trying to come alive in you, in your heart. That new soul that is divine, but still maybe newly born, or not even born, but trying to be born in you, in your heart. That process is a universal process. It's not only for the now, it's for the future, but it was also a process that was held in the past, and that past, written down in the pyramids, written down in your body, is still calling us, you and me. We can only wish us a very good path towards the rebirth in your queen's chamber of your new soul, because that's the path the members, but especially the pupils of the Golden Rosy Cross actually go in their lives as good as it gets, and sometimes as difficult or easy as it gets. It is a special path of that joy of recognizing your real you. But you can only define that for yourself. I cannot do that for you. We hope you have enjoyed it. Before we close down, we would like to say, don't forget to bring your pentagram. We don't promote our books as such, but we can only recommend reading these books that are out there. We have a copy heavily reduced in price of the Egyptian Arch Gnosis, explaining to you the Corpus Hermeticum, so the original writings. We can really recommend reading them. So if you want to buy them, you can actually. If you want to read them online, you can also do that on goldenrosycross.org/books. Tomorrow, we will also be here in the same venue with an event we call a renewal conference. Because we have learned that we have to renew, we have to change, we have to lift our vibration of our bodies based on that fifth element in us, the divine element, because that's higher than whatever in us. So if we can let that grow, renew, then it will renew our system. And that is why Rosicrucians come together so often in what we call renewal conferences. A renewal conference will take place here tomorrow, which we call 3 meetings or services, and you are wholeheartedly invited to attend. First service will be at 11 a.m. So if you can be around 11:15, that would be happy, so you can settle, tune in, relax, come to silence, and focus on the divine in you. Second one is 1:30 p.m. and the last one 3:30 p.m. So we'll conclude by 4:30. You don't have to register, you can just show up if you want to be here with us.
It's free of charge.
Free of charge.
But bring your own lunch.
Yeah,
or
bring your own
have
lunch.
it from
Yeah.
cafes nearby.
The next talk will also be here, also hybrid, sorry, on 4 and 16 November. Not here?
It's not here, a different venue.
Oh, different venue. So save the date, but keep an eye open.
Elephant and Castle.
It's written here.
Yeah, I've got my own brochure. You have a brochure that you can bring with you. You can find it also online. If there's more brochures, I think maybe people will be happy.
Yeah.
Oh, the inlay is gone. But anyway, it's 4 and 16 November. You're wholeheartedly invited. Oh, it's esoteric Christianity. So the real meaning of Christianity related to the divine element in you, and alchemy, Rosicrucian alchemy today. That was one thing. That is the last one. If you really want to explore the Rosy Cross does in the world, very openly, like this, you can sign up as a member, and then you have more opportunities to explore the temple services, the renewal conferences, also online at this moment, for those who cannot attend in person. And so if you can sign up as a member, you will be invited to that. Membership is free of obligations, free of costs. It's just for you to explore who we are and what we do and how we do it and why. So that's an opportunity on the Golden Rose Cross website, Golden Rose Cross membership. I think that was it for now. As Jacek said, you were happy to have a coffee, have a look, have a talk. If you have more questions that you want to ask in private, please do so. We're not chasing you away. And before we say thank you, also our viewers online, we would say, have a very pleasant evening wherever you are. And we hope to see you again. And I'm now giving the word to Cor.
A very short concluding reading, after which we can meet each other for a cup of tea, if you like. The omnipresent wisdom is a radiation, a vibration, a universal light force, a great and special electromagnetic force. It is the highest radiation of the all revelation, the radiation of the spirit itself. When a person possesses the rising hermetic consciousness, the radiation of the spirit is immediately recognized and experienced by this consciousness. May it be so with all of us. Thank you. Please.
We wish you a very good journey home. Take care of yourself.